The rain hammered against the panoramic windows of Cha Eun-woo's Seoul apartment, a relentless drumming that mirrored the turmoil in his heart. Outside, the city glittered, a dazzling tapestry of lights that seemed to mock his present despair. He ran a hand through his already disheveled hair, the legal documents spread across the mahogany table a stark reminder of the nightmare unfolding. Accusations of embezzlement, fabricated evidence, a public smear campaign orchestrated by a jealous rival, it all felt surreal, a cruel twist of fate for a man who had dedicated his life to his craft. 5 years ago, Eun-woo's life had taken an unexpected turn. A visit to an orphanage, intended as a charitable photo opportunity, transformed into something profoundly more meaningful. He met Min-jun, a boy of 7, withdrawn and silent, diagnosed with selective mutism following a traumatic experience he couldn't, or wouldn't, articulate. Min-jun's eyes, though, spoke volumes, large, dark pools filled with a quiet sadness that resonated deep within Eun-woo. He saw a reflection of his own childhood loneliness, the relentless pressure of expectations, the feeling of being an outsider looking in. The adoption process was arduous, fraught with bureaucratic hurdles and societal skepticism. A single, successful actor adopting a child with special needs? It raised eyebrows, fueled gossip, and invited judgment. But Eun-woo was resolute. He felt an undeniable connection to Min-jun, a paternal instinct he never knew he possessed. He envisioned a home filled with love, patience, and understanding, a sanctuary where Min-jun could heal and find his voice, in whatever way that might manifest. Bringing Min-jun home was both exhilarating and daunting. The boy remained largely silent, communicating through gestures and expressions. Eun-woo learned to interpret the subtle nuances of his body language, the flicker of a smile, the furrow of his brow. He hired therapists, speech pathologists, and child psychologists, creating a supportive environment designed to nurture Min-jun's emotional and developmental growth. He read him stories, took him to parks, patiently taught him to play the piano, filling their days with quiet moments of connection. Slowly, painstakingly, Min-jun began to blossom. The initial fear in his eyes softened, replaced by a cautious curiosity. He started to initiate contact, reaching for Eun-woo's hand, leaning against him during movie nights. He drew pictures, vibrant and expressive, filling notebooks with his unspoken thoughts and feelings. The bond between them deepened, a silent language of love and trust that transcended words. Eun-woo found solace and purpose in his role as a father, the unconditional love he received from Min-jun a balm to the pressures of his demanding career. Now, 5 years later, that carefully constructed world was crumbling. The trial was looming, the evidence stacked against him. His reputation was in tatters, his career hanging by a thread. Despair threatened to engulf him, the weight of the accusations crushing his spirit. He glanced at the framed photo on his desk, a candid shot of him and Min-jun laughing on a beach, the boy's arms wrapped tightly around his neck. That image, that unwavering love, was the only thing keeping him afloat. He had to fight, not just for himself, but for Min-jun, for the future they had built together. He couldn't let him down. He wouldn't. He heard a soft knock on the door. Min-jun peeked in, his eyes filled with concern. He held up a drawing, a picture of Eun-woo standing tall, a superhero figure, surrounded by swirling chaos. Beneath the drawing, carefully printed in large, slightly shaky letters, was a single word, strong. Eun-woo's heart swelled. He rose, crossed the room, and knelt before Min-jun, taking his small hands in his. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I will be strong. For you." He hugged Min-jun tightly, drawing strength from his presence, from the unwavering belief in those silent, expressive eyes. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he wasn't alone. He had Min-jun, his silent guardian, his unwavering source of love and hope. And perhaps, just perhaps, a miracle was about to unfold. The trial began with a media frenzy. Paparazzi swarmed the courthouse, their flashes blinding, their questions relentless. Eun-woo, shielded by his legal team, navigated the chaos with a stoic expression, masking the turmoil within. Inside, the courtroom was a cauldron of tension, the air thick with anticipation. The prosecution painted a damning picture of Eun-woo, portraying him as a ruthless businessman who had exploited his fame for personal gain. They presented financial records, carefully manipulated to suggest embezzlement, and paraded witnesses who testified to his supposed greed and ambition. Eun-woo's defense team countered with evidence of his charitable work, his impeccable track record, and the inconsistencies in the prosecution's case. They argued that the allegations were based on circumstantial evidence and fueled by the jealousy of a rival, a desperate attempt to tarnish his reputation. Eun-woo sat silently, his gaze fixed on the proceedings, his mind racing. He knew the stakes were high. If convicted, he would lose everything: his career, his freedom, and, most importantly, his son. Min-jun attended the trial every day, sitting quietly in the back row, his eyes never leaving Eun-woo. He didn't understand the legal complexities, the accusations and counter-accusations, but he sensed the gravity of the situation. He saw the stress etched on Eun-woo's face, the weariness in his eyes. He wanted to help, to offer comfort, but he was trapped in his silence, unable to express the emotions that swirled within him. Days turned into weeks, the trial dragging on, each day more agonizing than the last. The prosecution's case seemed to be gaining momentum, their carefully crafted narrative swaying public opinion. Eun-woo felt the pressure mounting, the weight of the world on his shoulders. He spent sleepless nights poring over legal documents, searching for a glimmer of hope, a way to clear his name. One afternoon, during a particularly grueling session, the prosecution presented what seemed to be irrefutable evidence, a signed document that appeared to implicate Eun-woo in the embezzlement scheme. The document was a contract, seemingly authorizing the transfer of funds to a shell corporation controlled by Eun-woo. The prosecutor held up the document for the jury to see, his voice dripping with triumph. "This, ladies and gentlemen, is the smoking gun. This proves beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Cha Eun-woo was guilty of embezzlement." Eun-woo felt his heart sink. He had never seen this document before. It was a forgery, a fabrication, but how could he prove it? His defense team scrambled, desperately trying to find a way to discredit the evidence, but the document looked authentic, the signature a perfect match to Eun-woo's. The atmosphere in the courtroom was electric. The jury looked stunned, the judge looked grave. Eun-woo felt his world collapsing around him. He glanced at Min-jun, who was watching him with wide, frightened eyes. He couldn't bear the thought of disappointing him, of letting him down. Suddenly, Min-jun stood up. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Everyone turned to look at the small boy, who had been silent for so long. He took a deep breath, his hands trembling, his eyes fixed on the prosecutor. "That's not his signature," he said, his voice barely a whisper, but clear and distinct. The courtroom fell silent. You could hear a pin drop. The prosecutor stared at Min-jun in disbelief. "What did you say?" Min-jun took another deep breath, his voice growing stronger. "That's not his signature. I've seen him sign his name 1,000,000 times. That's not how he does it." Eun-woo stared at Min-jun, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. After all these years, Min-jun was speaking. And he was speaking to defend him. The prosecutor scoffed. "This is absurd. The boy is mute. He can't possibly know anything about Mr. Cha's signature." "He's not mute," Eun-woo said, his voice filled with emotion. "He has selective mutism. He can speak. And he's telling the truth." Min-jun stepped forward, his eyes blazing with determination. "His signature, the loop and the E, it's always bigger. And the W, it's more pointed. That one is round. It's not him." The defense team seized on Min-jun's testimony, demanding that the document be examined by a handwriting expert. The judge, intrigued by the boy's unexpected intervention, agreed. The expert's report came back the next day. It confirmed Min-jun's suspicions. The signature on the document was indeed a forgery, a sophisticated imitation, but ultimately detectable. The courtroom erupted in chaos. The prosecution's case crumbled, their star witness discredited. The judge declared a mistrial, citing the newly discovered evidence and the possibility of prosecutorial misconduct. Eun-woo was exonerated. The media frenzy intensified, but this time, it was different. The narrative had shifted. Eun-woo was no longer the accused, but the victim of a malicious smear campaign. And Min-jun, the silent boy who had found his voice to save his father, became a symbol of hope and resilience. Outside the courthouse, Eun-woo knelt down and hugged Min-jun tightly. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You saved me. You saved us." Min-jun smiled, his eyes shining. "I love you, Appa," he said, the words clear and strong. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. Eun-woo's reputation had been tarnished, and it would take time to rebuild trust. But he had Min-jun by his side, and that was all that mattered. They had faced the darkness together, and they had emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable. In the days that followed, Min-jun continued to speak, his voice growing louder and more confident with each passing day. He started attending regular speech therapy sessions, working with therapists to overcome his selective mutism. He shared his thoughts and feelings with Eun-woo, opening up about the trauma he had experienced as a child. Eun-woo, in turn, became an advocate for children with special needs, using his platform to raise awareness and promote understanding. He established a foundation to support families struggling with selective mutism and other communication disorders. He wanted to give back, to help other children find their voice, just as Min-jun had found his. The rival who had orchestrated the smear campaign was eventually exposed and brought to justice. His motives were revealed to be a toxic mix of jealousy and ambition, a desperate attempt to sabotage Eun-woo's career. He faced severe legal and professional consequences, his reputation ruined, his career in tatters. Eun-woo and Min-jun continued to live their lives, their bond growing stronger with each passing year. They traveled the world, explored new cultures, and created countless memories together. Eun-woo never forgot the day Min-jun spoke for the first time, the day he saved him from ruin. It was a reminder of the power of love, the resilience of the human spirit, and the unwavering bond between a father and son. Years passed. Min-jun blossomed. The shy, almost ethereal boy transformed into a confident young man, his eyes still holding a depth of understanding beyond his years, but now also sparkling with mischief and a zest for life. He excelled in school, showing a particular aptitude for languages, perhaps a subconscious compensation for the years he spent in silence. He was fluent in Korean, English, and was now tackling Mandarin with an enthusiasm that both impressed and slightly intimidated his tutors. Eun-woo watched him, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. His career had recovered, perhaps even surpassed its previous heights. The public, initially captivated by the drama of the trial, had remained loyal, drawn to his genuine talent and touched by the story of his unwavering devotion to Min-jun. He was careful now, more discerning about the roles he chose, often opting for projects that allowed him to spend more time at home. The frivolous endorsements and fleeting fame held little appeal compared to the simple joy of sharing a meal with Min-jun, or helping him with his homework, or simply watching a movie together on a quiet evening. One afternoon, as Eun-woo was reviewing a new script, Min-jun entered the study, a thoughtful expression on his face. He was now 15, taller than Eun-woo remembered him being just yesterday, his voice having deepened into a pleasant baritone. "Appa," he began, hesitantly. "I've been thinking." Eun-woo looked up, setting the script aside. "What is it, Min-jun?" He always made time for Min-jun, no matter how pressing his schedule. I want to find them, Min-jun said, his gaze fixed on a point somewhere beyond the window. Eun-woo's heart skipped a beat. He knew exactly who Min-jun meant. He had always been open with Min-jun about his past, about the orphanage, about the circumstances that had led to his adoption. He had never pushed, never pried, but had always made it clear that he would support Min-jun in any way he could if he ever wanted to learn more. Your birth parents? Eun-woo asked softly, careful to keep his voice neutral. Min-jun nodded. I know it might be difficult. And I don't want you to think that I'm not grateful for everything you've done for me. Because I am. More than you could ever know. He rushed the words, as if afraid they wouldn't come out at all. Eun-woo stood up and walked over to Min-jun, placing a hand on his shoulder. Hey, he said gently. It's okay. I understand. This is your decision, and I will support you, no matter what. He paused, then added, but are you sure you're ready? It could be complicated. Min-jun met his gaze, his eyes filled with a mixture of apprehension and determination. I know. But I need to know. I need to understand where I come from. It's a part of me that's missing. Eun-woo squeezed his shoulder. All right. Then we'll do it. Together. The search began subtly, quietly. Eun-woo used his resources discreetly, hiring a private investigator known for his sensitivity and discretion. He made it clear that Min-jun's wishes were paramount, and that they were only seeking information, not necessarily a reunion. The investigator, a middle-aged woman named Miss Park, was thorough and empathetic. She understood the complexities of adoption and the delicate emotions involved. Weeks turned into months. Ms. Park provided regular updates, each one a mix of hope and potential disappointment. The records were incomplete, the memories faded. The orphanage where Min-jun had spent his early years had been closed down years ago, the staff scattered. It was like chasing ghosts. Then, a breakthrough. Ms. Park discovered a former nurse who had worked at the orphanage during the time Min-jun was there. The nurse, now retired and living in a small rural village, remembered Min-jun. She remembered his quiet demeanor, his expressive eyes, and the way he would cling to his small teddy bear. She also remembered his mother. According to the nurse, Min-jun's mother had been a young woman, barely out of her teens, when she had given birth to him. She had been unmarried and struggling to make ends meet. She had visited Min-jun regularly at the orphanage, always bringing him small gifts and showering him with affection. But eventually, she had stopped coming. The nurse believed she had moved away, possibly to find work. The nurse couldn't remember the mother's name, but she did remember a distinctive birthmark on her left wrist, a small, crescent-shaped mark. It was a long shot, but it was the best lead they had. Eun-woo and Min-jun decided to follow the lead. They traveled to the rural village where the nurse lived, eager to hear her story firsthand. The nurse welcomed them warmly, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and compassion. She shared her memories of Min-jun's mother, painting a picture of a young woman who had loved her son deeply but had been forced to make an impossible choice. As they were leaving, the nurse handed Min-jun a small, faded photograph. It was a picture of Min-jun as a baby, being held by a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. On her left wrist, clearly visible, was the crescent-shaped birthmark. Min-jun stared at the photograph, his eyes filling with tears. It was the first time he had ever seen his birth mother. He felt a strange mix of emotions, sadness, longing, and a sense of connection to a woman he had never known. We'll find her, Min-jun, Eun-woo said, putting his arm around him. We won't give up. The search intensified. Ms. Park expanded her investigation, focusing on young women who had lived in the area around the orphanage during the time Min-jun was born and who had a crescent-shaped birthmark on their left wrist. She scoured public records, interviewed former classmates, and followed up on every possible lead. Finally, after months of searching, she found her. A woman named Hannah, who matched the description and had the distinctive birthmark. She was living in a small apartment in Seoul, working as a florist. She had never married and had no other children. Ms. Park arranged a meeting with Hannah, explaining the situation and showing her the photograph of Min-jun. Hannah was stunned. She had never forgotten her son, and she had often wondered what had become of him. She had always regretted giving him up, but she had believed it was the best thing for him. Hannah agreed to meet Min-jun. The meeting was arranged at a quiet cafe, away from the prying eyes of the media. Eun-woo waited outside, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew this was a moment that would change Min-jun's life forever. Min-jun entered the cafe, his hands trembling. He saw a woman sitting at a table, her face etched with a mixture of hope and apprehension. He recognized her immediately from the photograph. She had aged, but her eyes were still kind, her smile still gentle. He walked over to the table and sat down. "Hannah SSI?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The woman looked up, her eyes filling with tears. "Min-jun-ah," she said, her voice trembling. They stared at each other for a long moment, the silence broken only by the soft murmur of the cafe. Then, Hannah reached out and took Min-jun's hand. "You've grown into such a handsome young man," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I've thought about you every day." Min-jun squeezed her hand. "I've thought about you too," he said. They talked for hours, sharing their stories, their hopes, and their dreams. Hannah told Min-jun about her life, about the struggles she had faced, and about the love she had always held for him. Min-jun told her about his life with Eun-woo, about his education, and about his dreams for the future. As the evening drew to a close, Min-jun stood up to leave. He turned to Hannah and smiled. "I'm glad I found you," he said. "I have so much to learn." Hannah smiled back, her eyes shining with tears. "Me too, Min-jun-ah. Me too." The relationship between Min-jun and Hannah grew slowly, carefully. They met regularly, sharing meals, going for walks, and simply getting to know each other. Eun-woo was supportive, encouraging Min-jun to explore his connection with his birth mother while also reassuring him that he would always be his father. One day, Min-jun came to Eun-woo with a request. "Appa," he said, "I want Hannah to be a part of our family. I want her to be a part of our lives." Eun-woo smiled. He had been hoping for this. "Then let's make it happen," he said. And so, Hannah became a part of their family. She joined them for holidays, attended Min-jun's school events, and became a cherished friend. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of awkwardness, moments of uncertainty. But their love for Min-jun, and their willingness to embrace each other, helped them overcome any obstacles. Years later, as Min-jun stood on the stage, accepting an award for his work as a translator and interpreter, he looked out at the audience and saw two faces beaming with pride, Eun-woo and Hannah. He smiled, his heart overflowing with gratitude. He had found his voice, he had found his family, and he had found his place in the world. He knew that he was incredibly lucky, and he would never take it for granted. His journey had been long and difficult, but it had led him to this moment, a moment of joy, of fulfillment, and of profound love. The courtroom buzzed with a nervous energy. Cha Eun-woo sat at the defendant's table, his face etched with worry. The evidence against him, fabricated as it was, seemed insurmountable. The rival actor, a smug figure lurking in the gallery, watched with undisguised glee. Eun-woo glanced at Min-jun, who sat beside Ms. Park, his small hand gripping hers tightly. Hannah sat on the other side of Min-jun, her face reflecting worry, but also a quiet strength. The prosecution presented witness after witness, each meticulously coached to paint Eun-woo as a greedy embezzler, twisting charitable acts into self-serving publicity stunts. Eun-woo's lawyer fought valiantly, but the fabricated evidence and the sheer volume of accusations were overwhelming. The judge, a stern-faced woman, listened intently, her expression unreadable. Days blurred into a relentless barrage of accusations and rebuttals. The media frenzy outside the courthouse was relentless, each headline further tarnishing Eun-woo's reputation. Sponsors began to pull out, projects were shelved, and the weight of the accusations threatened to crush him. He felt the eyes of the world on him, judging him, condemning him. Then came the day when the prosecution rested its case. Eun-woo's lawyer, looking weary but determined, called his first witness, Cha Eun-woo himself. Eun-woo took the stand, his heart pounding. He swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. He spoke calmly, clearly, denying each accusation, explaining his actions, and revealing the rival actor's blatant attempts at sabotage. He spoke of his dedication to his craft, his commitment to philanthropy, and his love for Min-joon. But the prosecution was relentless, grilling him with pointed questions, attempting to trip him up, and twisting his words. They questioned his motives, his past, and even his relationship with Min-joon, insinuating that the adoption was nothing more than a publicity stunt. Eun-woo felt a surge of anger, but he controlled himself, refusing to let them see him break. He answered each question with honesty and integrity, maintaining his composure despite the relentless pressure. Finally, after hours of testimony, his lawyer asked him one final question, "Mr. Cha, is there anything else you would like to say to the court?" Eun-woo looked directly at the judge, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I am not a perfect man," he said, his voice resonating through the courtroom. "I have made mistakes in my life. But I am not a thief. I am not a liar. I am a father, a son, and an artist. I have always tried to do what is right, and I will continue to do so. I trust that the court will see through these false accusations and recognize the truth." He stepped down from the stand, feeling drained but resolute. He looked at Min-joon, who gave him a small, reassuring smile. The next day, the defense called its final witness, Min-joon. A hush fell over the courtroom as Min-joon, hand in hand with Hannah, walked to the witness stand. He looked small and vulnerable, but his eyes held a surprising strength. The judge looked at him with kindness. "Min-joon SSI, she said gently, do you understand what it means to tell the truth?" Min-joon nodded, his eyes fixed on Eun-woo. Eun-woo's lawyer approached him cautiously. "Min-joon, she said softly, can you tell the court about your father, Cha Eun-woo?" Min-joon took a deep breath. He looked at Eun-woo, then at the judge, then at the rival actor, who was now visibly unnerved. He opened his mouth, and for the first time in 5 years, he spoke. "Appa," he said, his voice clear and steady, "is a good man. He always takes care of me. He loves me very much." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Everyone stared at Min-joon in disbelief. He continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "The man is lying," he said, pointing at the rival actor. "He is jealous of Appa. He wants to hurt him." The rival actor recoiled, his face turning pale. Min-joon turned back to the judge. "Appa never did anything wrong," he said. "He is my hero." Tears streamed down Eun-woo's face. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Min-joon had spoken, not just for himself, but for him. He had risked everything to defend his father. The judge, visibly moved, leaned forward. "Min-joon SSI, she said, her voice filled with emotion, how do you know these things?" Min-joon looked at her with unwavering conviction. "I know because I see it," he said. "I see Appa's heart. It is a good heart." The courtroom was silent, except for the soft sound of Min-joon's breathing. The prosecution sat in stunned silence, their case crumbling before their eyes. Eun-woo's lawyer approached the judge. "Your Honor," she said, "I have no further questions." The judge nodded. "Min-joon SSI, she said, you may step down." Min-joon walked back to his seat, his head held high. He looked at Eun-woo and smiled. The next day, the judge delivered her verdict. After carefully reviewing the evidence and considering the testimony of all the witnesses, she found Cha Eun-woo not guilty on all counts. A cheer erupted in the courtroom. Eun-woo embraced Min-jun, tears of relief streaming down his face. He had been exonerated, not just by the court, but by his son's unwavering love and courage. The rival actor slunk out of the courtroom, his reputation in tatters. His plan had backfired spectacularly. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of supporters cheered and applauded as Eun-woo, Min-jun, and Hannah emerged. The media, once so critical, now clamored for interviews. Eun-woo held Min-jun close. "Thank you, Min-jun," he whispered. "You saved me." Min-jun smiled. "I love you, Appa," he said. That night, as Eun-woo tucked Min-jun into bed, he knew that their bond was stronger than ever. They had faced adversity together, and they had emerged victorious. Min-jun's voice, once silent, had become their salvation. And Eun-woo knew that he would spend the rest of his life repaying his son for his unwavering love and loyalty. The experience changed Eun-woo. He became even more dedicated to his philanthropic work, using his platform to advocate for children with disabilities and to raise awareness about the importance of adoption. He and Hannah worked together to support families in need, creating a foundation that provided resources and opportunities for children from all backgrounds. He also became a more attentive father, cherishing every moment with Min-jun. He enrolled him in speech therapy, helping him to further develop his communication skills. Min-jun blossomed, becoming a confident and articulate young man. As for the rival actor, his career never recovered. He was ostracized by the industry and eventually faded into obscurity. His jealousy and ambition had consumed him, leading to his downfall. Years later, Eun-woo stood proudly beside Min-jun as he graduated from university. Min-jun had chosen to study linguistics, inspired by his own journey to find his voice. He planned to use his skills to help others communicate, bridging cultural divides and fostering understanding. As Min-jun delivered his graduation speech, his voice resonated with confidence and passion. He spoke of the importance of perseverance, the power of love, and the transformative effect of finding one's voice. He thanked his father, Cha Eun-woo, for believing in him, for loving him unconditionally, and for giving him a chance at a better life. Eun-woo watched with tears in his eyes, his heart overflowing with pride. He knew that Min-jun's journey had just begun, and he couldn't wait to see what the future held for his extraordinary son. He also knew that no matter what challenges they faced, they would always have each other. Their bond, forged in love and strengthened by adversity, was unbreakable. The once mute orphan had not only found his voice, but he had also saved his father, and in doing so, he had changed the world. And Cha Eun-woo, the actor, had found his greatest role, that of a father, forever grateful for the love of his son. The celebratory dinner after Min-jun's graduation was a small, intimate affair. Just Eun-woo, Min-jun, and Hannah, at their favorite restaurant, the same one they'd celebrated Min-jun's adoption years ago. The air buzzed with a quiet joy, a shared understanding of the long journey they'd taken together. "I'm so proud of you, Min-jun," Eun-woo said, his voice thick with emotion. "Seeing you up there today, it was the proudest moment of my life." Min-jun smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Thanks, Appa. None of this would have been possible without you." "And Hannah." Hannah reached across the table and squeezed Min-jun's hand. "You did all the work, Min-jun. We just provided the support." The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and shared memories. They reminisced about the early days, the challenges they faced, and the small victories that had paved the way to this moment.